Now we know knowledge isn't everything. We know just because you have a degree in this, degree in that, doesn't really make you smart. You can have a PhD in anything under the sun, but still not be the sharpest tool in the shed, or the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, or whatever your saying is that it comes to that. So it doesn't matter. And those degrees, those titles, isn't enough to learn information and understand it. I know when I was getting my degree, and you're spending money and it's expensive, and I seen people come in and really not care about it and kind of halfway-heartedly do it. I'm like, man, this is crazy. And my professor, my instructor, I think he was getting his master's degree, and it got brought up in conversation about just because you have this don't mean you really know anything. And he said there's people in his master's degree who had that same mentality where they come in, they do just enough, and somehow they get by and they get their degree, but they're no smarter than when they entered, and they have a master's degree. So just because you have something doesn't mean that you're the brightest one. Because what you have to do is you got to know how to apply what you've learned if you want to gain a higher level. It takes more than just trying to look and listen. You got to actually apply what you're learning. You must attain the highest level, which is wisdom. Now, it's hard to get wisdom. It can be hard. Most of the time, wisdom comes with pain. Most of the time, that's how you get your wisdom, is through pain. And often, even though we have wisdom, we don't apply it because we don't know it's wisdom. Now, the bad thing is knowledge has to come first before wisdom. You can't have wisdom without knowledge. Knowledge has to come first. Knowledge is important. You need knowledge to understand and comprehend things, and once you have grown in that knowledge, you can understand and be ready for wisdom. Now, you can also gain wisdom by someone else's pain, and by listening to them and saying, look, avoid these landmines. Don't do this. I know from experience, don't do that. And you can gain that wisdom and say, okay, do I listen to that? Or do I still choose to learn through pain? Now, I have made it very well known that citizenship is not easy. It's not easy to be a citizen. It's yours if you want it, but it's not easy. And why is that? Because unless you are sold out to your king and his kingdom by obeying laws and principles that he's set up, and your life being subject to him and what's around you, it takes some time. Citizenship isn't easy. That's why we're going through this. Because the desire is that you want to strive for something. You say, I want that. I'm going to do anything I can to attain that. It doesn't work. Citizenship doesn't come by just getting saved. There's more to it than just that. All right, citizenship is, yes, getting saved. That's a critical step, but it's what you do after you get saved depends on your citizenship. There is a standard in which reflects God's image onto you. You do not reflect God by saying and acting like earthly citizens. It's been said before many times, and it will get said more. Are you living the example of what God is? Are you living in such a way that when God looks into the earth, he sees himself? Pastor brought the mirror, showed it up to you. You're the reflection. Are you acting like that reflection? Does he, God, see himself when he looks upon this earth, or does he see just another Satan? Now we get to a person in the Bible who, I don't know that there's anything bad about this person. When I was going through this, I couldn't think of anything that he really failed at. And we have this guy named Joseph. Joseph was different than all his other brothers. And Joseph was a pinnacle in a way that no matter what happened in his life, doesn't matter what tragedies, it doesn't matter what trials, his character never changed. Joseph would end up working for Potiphar. Regardless of him being sold into slavery, and even though he was a slave, the Bible doesn't say this, but we know if he found favor, then he had to have worked hard for his master. I'm sure he's like, look, I'm going to make the best of this. I'm going to be the best slave I can be. He worked hard, and that favor was found upon him. What was it? It was character and integrity. Joseph was made an overseer at that point. But then something else happened, and his master's wife kept looking upon him. And Joseph still had character and integrity and chose not to commit the sin. Day after day, Potiphar's wife kept going to him day after day. But guess what? Character and integrity still remained in his life. He refused. We know he finally got in prison because of it, because she claimed that he raped her, or he tried to, and so Potiphar throws him in prison. But even while Joseph's in prison, his character and integrity remain intact. Because of his character and integrity, once again he puts in front of his master, and his dreams begin to then manifest. Why? Because his character got him there. He wouldn't have gotten there if he bickered and complained. Yes, he had favor, but there's a reason why God had favor upon his life. So what is the definition of character? The mental and moral qualities distinctive to an individual. Another definition character can be is committing to a set of standards that will never change. Right? An example we have alphabet, we have numbers, we have characters, and they are referred to as characters, symbols. They're all characters. Those characters never change. Doesn't matter how much you want A to be B, it doesn't work like that. The number 5 will never identify as number 1. The letter X will never identify with the letter K. They will never do that. Their character stays the same no matter what. Those same characters were taught when I was in elementary school. And those same characters are being taught to my kids. They haven't changed. They stayed the same. There was a standard that was set that those characters remain the same. They're the same yesterday, they're the same today, and those characters will be the same tomorrow regardless of what you think they will be. When you become a citizen of the kingdom and want to see kingdom things operate in your life, you need to set a series of character standards that do not change. Now, during this, please, I am not talking about theologies and man-made standards. That's not what I am leaning towards. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a relationship with God in which you make yourself have high character standards and say, I am not going to jeopardize my relationship with God. I will not lower my standards just to enjoy a temporary feeling or gain some benefit. It's up to you. Seek out your own salvation. You wake up every day and say, I will not lie. Now, while I was going through this, Sister Lisa, our conversation got brought forth from our conversation from Sunday after service. And as I was going through this, I initiated something. I'm the one who said it, okay? I did. I'm the one who said it, okay? And I'm not going to go into details about what it was or what not, but it was funny because I said something and we began to talk about it, and then Brother Dave, you could just tell he could read his wife. And even though Lisa wasn't saying nothing, you could tell that it didn't like her character. Her character was being hit because she had a standard set. And she says, I don't agree with that, and my standard is going to stay here. And I was thinking of that, and I was thinking, no matter what happened that time, Lisa's standard didn't change. Didn't budge. She says, this is where I draw the line. And I don't want any part of it. And we need to wake up every day with, not just that, with other things. Wake up with a standard to say, okay, what might I get faced with today? I'm not going to do this if I get faced with A, B, and C. I will not do this. I'm going to set a standard in my life to say that is not going to happen. You set a standard every day because every day something will come and face you. The Constitution does not change. We know that. Constitution will remain the same. And we need to wake up every day and tell the truth and be honest and set ourselves apart so that way we can look at our Constitution and say, yep, I'm following that. Here's my standard of living. Now, we used to live in a day where character actually mattered in this society. To where one's word was good enough. Where handshakes and promises were held close. You didn't let your word go in vain because you cared about your name's sake, and you didn't want your name to be hindered in any way. So when you made a promise, you held on to that promise and you came through because your word mattered. Your character mattered, but we don't see that much more anymore today. We've gotten away with the integrity of our namesake. We no longer have a desire to keep the reputation of our name. Our name means nothing to us now. But if you want to see the kingdom, you're going to have to start caring about your name again. Not only do you have to start caring about your name, but you have to start caring about His name. And you can't care about His name if you don't care about your name. Once you're a citizen, you bore your king's name. And I will tell you, your king will not be mocked. God will not be put down with all the other mediocre things in your life. As a citizen, you must have integrity. Integrity, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles or moral uprightness. That's why citizenship isn't easy, because citizenship requires of something from you, requires sacrifice. You are to have character about you that says, I'm here to stand for integrity, and I will not move just because the wind blows a certain direction. Now, here's what we're seeking. Here's what people are seeking. There are people seeking kingdom citizens to show them what a true character is and act it out in front of them. People are looking for God. They may not know that, but they're looking for God. And you know that they're looking for God because you can look at our world and see that everything's turning into a God, little g. Doesn't matter what it is, everything gets turned into a God in our life. Why? Because that inner being, that we're seeking something. So when we can't find it, we decide to make something fit that. People are looking. They're waiting for an image of God to shine in front of them. Now, they don't know that. But that's what they're looking for. And once they see it, then something inside them begins to draw towards it. Now, it is important to note, and I hope no one thinks I'm saying this, but I am not talking about perfect people. There is no perfect person. One existed a long time ago. We all have shortcomings. We all fall short of the glory of God. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what title you have. We are all surrounded with grace and mercy. So I'm not saying that you must be perfect. Don't take that as what I am talking about. Because you're going to mess up. We all are going to mess up. You battle your flesh every day. And even though your flesh is most of your problem, we still face a very real enemy who seeks to make us stumble. They don't make it easy for our flesh. You are a citizen of the kingdom, and once you've been born into the kingdom, the king has a higher expectation for you. Now, as we said, you will fail from time to time. You'll fall. You'll mess up. It's part of it. You may get loud at times and maybe yell at your kids once or twice, more than what you should. But here's the thing, that doesn't become your life. That's not your life. And there should be a point in your life where instead of trying not to sin, you got to wake up and, I got to make sure I don't sin today. There should be a point, there should be a shift in your life where you don't say, I can't sin today. You start to say, is this wise? There should be a point in where you get more right than you get wrong. It may come with time. It may come with battling things here and there. Chances are it won't come overnight. But as you start doing that, it will feel more natural to you as time goes on. It may feel like a put on at first. It may feel like, man, this feels weird doing this thing called right and being honest and not lying. It feels weird, but you do it long enough and it becomes a natural habit. Your character through time will shine without you even trying. Because it has become a natural environment in which you possess. You won't have to think about it anymore if you do it. Now, the best example I have for it feeling not natural to you and you do it long enough and it feels natural to you is driving. Driving is the perfect example to this. Because I know from personal experience, I got my permit the day I turned 15. Drove for a whole year, day I turned 16, got my license. And even when I went through the school, driving school, and my dad's teaching me all this, and at that age, you're trying to remember everything that you've been taught about driving, and you're playing all these scenarios in your head, and you're constantly thinking about this, that, and the other, and you're looking at your mirrors, you're watching your speed, you're just constantly doing all these things because it's not natural to you to do all of this. You're looking beside you, you turn your turning signal on, you leave it on for 10 minutes, and you look 3 times just to make sure no one's there. Because you don't want to hit someone, and it's just not natural to you, and you're not relaxed, and you got to remember to come to a full stop when you're at the stop sign, before the stop sign, and you got to remember if you said S-T-O-P, stop S-T-O-P, to ensure you were stopped long enough. That's what I was told when I started driving in school. When you stop, you say S-T-O-P, and that accounts long enough for you to say, I stopped. That's what they drilled into me. You stop before the stop sign. If there's a sidewalk and then the stop sign, you stop before the sidewalk. There are these things that you're constantly playing in your mind, and you're like, okay, am I 3 seconds? Do I have 3 seconds from this car to this car to turn? And you're playing all this in your head, and you're gripping the steering wheel, and you can't relax. And then my dad told me one time, and while he was doing this and teaching me that, he says, pretty soon, all of this will come natural to you, and you won't have to think about all of this. So I don't have to think about all of this. I've been driving for 15 years. It comes natural for me to drive now. I don't think about my turning signal. I don't think about looking at my speed 20 times. I don't have to do all of this when I was 15. I'm sitting here trying to make sure it's natural. It became natural. The more I did it, the more I felt comfortable around it, and the more it overtook my life. Your character is the same way. The more and longer you show true character, the easier it becomes. The more you tell the truth, the easier it becomes. The more you're honest, the easier it becomes. And before you know it, you do it without even realizing it. I had a recent experience. My brother and I went to a store. We were in Nixon. My brother and I went to a store. And I brought stuff to the counter, and in my mind, I already knew what was going to happen because the cashier had my stuff, and he was doing something with another item. And he set my stuff down on that other item, and I'm sitting here mentally thinking, I knew it was going to happen. I was like, he's going to accidentally put that in my bag. I know he is. I know he is. And because I knew it was going to happen because I knew he was distracted, wasn't thinking. I knew it was going to happen. So he goes through. I think we had to do something, and I kind of lost track of it. So my brother and I were walking back to the car, and I was like, I need to check if that's in my bag. So I'm pretty sure he did it. Look in my bag. There it was. Go in. Hey, man, you accidentally put this in my bag. Oh, man, thank you so much. And his manager was standing right there. She was like, yeah, you were supposed to ship that out. I didn't have to think about being honest. I didn't have to think, man, I could get some money out of this. It's like, do I really need to take it back? It was his mistake. I didn't have to think about, do I keep this? I didn't have to think that. Why? Because I can understand, okay, maybe this is a test. I'm going to make sure I pass this test. Not only that, but if I do this, then God, you have to give something back to me now. I'm just putting it back on you. I'm honest. Okay, I done something for you. You got to do something for me. So I'm like, well, shoot, if I do this, he's going to get me something better. I'm good with that. But what happens? If your character is high, you have standards, you don't have to think about being good. You just be good. You should have character even when no one is watching. Your character does not change because of friends, family, or any other environment that comes against you. Your character stands when everyone bows. You all have been called into citizenship. You have all been called to be ambassadors. But that involves more than just a temporary experience. And that doesn't matter what season of life you're in or how old you are. Character still remains the same. Character does not change. That standard should not change no matter where you are at in life. The character of standards does not change. Right is right all the time. Wrong is wrong all the time. They wander around trying to find it, and they ask that question of who I am, why am I here, and all this. And here's the problem that comes with that scenario, is you cannot find your identity if you have no standards. On Sunday, you're this. On Wednesday, you're that. On Friday, you're this. There's no standard about you. You're different in every way, shape, and form. Doesn't matter what day it is. Today you're this way, the next day you're that way. There's no standard about you. You have no standard. Therefore, you let other people identify you and let them choose your destiny. You see yourself as a victim and you think that you're not good enough, so you attract people who will abuse and take advantage of you. Because that's how you think, that's what you attract. And because you have no standard about yourself, you let anybody in. The standard should be, I am a child of God. I am a citizen of his kingdom. And I choose not to let influences or anything around me tell me what I am. I am holy. I am worthy. I am righteous. And if the only person who tells me is my heavenly Father, then so be it. His word is good enough for me, and that's what our attitude needs to be. That's what our standard needs to be. But we have too many fickle people in the church. We have too many fickle people around us. We have too many fickle people who are different on Thursday and they're not the same as Tuesday. And now a character, a high character, a character of the citizenship has boundaries. A person who has boundaries in their life, a person who has boundaries in their life has a fruitful life. People with integrity or high character have gained the ability to police themselves. These boundaries aren't set up as a prison that encapsulates them. If you tame your flesh and keep a foothold on the things that it desires by setting boundaries in your life, you will set up for yourself unbelievable blessings. Those boundaries were placed not to entrap themselves, but to protect themselves. Now I'm going to pull a truth out of Ezekiel. And I'm not taking this scripture out of context, because in this Ezekiel 47, Ezekiel is having a vision, and I'm not wanting to take that vision and say this is what the vision is, but there's a critical element in this vision that I want us to understand. So I'm pulling a truth from this vision. Ezekiel 47:7. Now when I had returned, behold, at the bank of the river were many trees on the one side and on the other. Then said he unto me, these waters issue out toward the east country, and go down into the desert, and go into the sea, which being brought forth into the sea, the waters shall be healed. And it shall come to pass that everything that liveth, which moveth, whithersoever the rivers shall come, shall live. And there shall be a good great multitude of fish, because these waters shall come thither. For they shall be healed, and everything shall live, whither the river cometh. Verse 10. And it shall come to pass that the fishers shall stand upon it from Engedi, I think that's right, Engedi, even into Englium. They shall be a place to spread forth nets. Their fish shall be according to their kinds, as the fish of the great sea, exceeding many. Verse 11. But the miry places thereof and the marshes thereof shall not be healed. They shall be given to salt. And by the river upon the bank thereof on this side and on that side shall grow all trees for meat, whose leaf shall not faint, neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. And it shall bring forth new fruit according to his months, because their waters they issued out of the sanctuary, and the fruit thereof shall be meat, and leaf thereof for medicine. So what's happening here? There's this river. This river's giving life. It gives food. It gives nutrients. And it sustains everything that it touches. It has the animals. It has the fish in there. It produces and it protects. It gives life. Everything that this river touches is just blossoming. But what does verse 11 say? Verse 11 said, "But the miry places thereof and the marshes thereof shall not be healed. They shall be given to salt." So, here we have two distinct bodies of water. We have a river, and then we have a marsh or a swamp. Okay, we have two different bodies of water. A river, the river that we're talking about, feeds everything in the bank. With everything that grows, that river gives life. Everything it touches. But then there's a swamp or a marsh. So then we have to ask ourselves, what's the difference? The difference is there are no boundaries. It has no banks. The water is stagnant. It stinks. Very little can even be sustained in that water. Why? Because there are bodies of water that they don't have any boundaries. Water goes everywhere. It doesn't stop at a certain point. There's nothing to keep it contained. So because there are no boundaries, it just does whatever it wants. Everything inside a river is living. Everything inside that river gave life. Why? Because there were parameters set in place. If your life, if someone's life is jacked up and always in chaos, you can guarantee that they have no boundaries. You can look at their life and see they have no standard about their life, and they do whatever it is that they want to do. They have no structure. They have no idea who they are. They let this person in, and they let another person in, and they start letting this thing happen, and they start letting that thing happen, and the next thing you know, they're going out to this type of environment, and they're going to that type of environment. Then they get involved with these things, and they have no thought. They have no second remorse. They have no emotions, and even if they do have emotions, they run rampant, and they let it control them, and they're doing this and that, and life runs everywhere in their life, and there's no structure, there's no parameters. The water just goes wherever it wants, and it's only a matter of time before a swamp sets in. And what happens when a swamp sets in? No one wants to be around it. No one cares about it. That is not kingdom citizenship. Kingdom citizenship has boundaries. It has integrity. It has a character that polices it in such a way that you don't even get near the fence. Now, my kids are not old enough to draw their own boundaries. So, what's mommy and daddy do? We draw their boundaries for them. It's part of being a parent. They are not old enough to say, I can do this, because they don't understand the repercussions of doing A, B, and C. So mommy and daddy have to say, hey, you can't watch that. You can't listen to this. You can't go there. Why? Because there are boundaries set in place. And if you go past those boundaries, repercussions will come from breaking those boundaries. We can see time and time, we can see in our society kids on the street, and we got 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds that are on the street, and they can't function. They don't know that. They don't have any parameters. They have no guidance. There are kids out there craving for a mommy and daddy to create a boundary for them. Why? Because boundaries show that someone cares enough for me. I don't want my 6-year-old jumping off his bed onto his stuffed T-Rex. I don't want that. Why? Because he can hurt himself. I don't want my 5-year-old climbing up on her headboard. Why? Because I don't want anything to happen to her. So therefore, boundaries are set in place to say, hey, don't stand on your headboard. Don't climb on your dresser. Boundaries. There's simple boundaries now, but the older they get, okay, now we have to move past that boundary. And now we have to say, okay, 10 o'clock's your curfew, that's your boundary. And they just they just keep going and going and going. Now, when a kid doesn't listen to the boundaries that have been set before them and listen to wisdom of their parents, then a life lesson must happen to them. And that life lesson forces them to change, and that life lesson is pain. Pain has to enter their life and force a change. And if they don't change, that pain will keep coming back because they keep choosing to go past that boundary. If you choose not to listen to wisdom, then pain is your only option of being taught. It's your only option. And I promise you, God will use pain. He prefers wisdom, and He will put in front of you. He will put people in front of you to give you wisdom, to lead a better life, to have a better life. But if you choose not to listen, then you going past those boundaries will cause some pain. Kingdom citizenship means you are mature. What's maturity? It's when you have the ability to recognize a situation, when you can recognize that there is something different about a moment. It is when you can internally see a boundary coming up. It's when you can see, there's just something not right about this. I feel like there's a line here, and I don't know if I should cross. That's maturity. Maturity is when you can recognize that and say, man, I think this is leading me down a road that it's not, I don't know that I'm going to like where it brings me. If you do not place little boundaries in your life, then you end up placing big ones. Boundaries is, how far do I let my friends influence me? If that little boundary is not met, then if you go past that boundary, now you become what they are. Just because a little boundary is not set. How far do you let your kids talk back? If a boundary is not set, then before you know it, your kid is cussing you out, and there is no respect. Then you try to draw a boundary, but that boundary is too late. And then a bigger boundary gets put in because then they say, fine, I'll just leave. What boundary do you set when talking to the opposite sex? If no boundary is set in place, then there is the potential of a covenant being broken, and then a bigger boundary gets called divorce. What line is drawn from being nice to flirting? What boundary do you set on the internet? If there isn't a small boundary set, then you end up doing things late at night with remorse that you don't want no one to find out about. What boundary is set on people? If no boundary is set, then everybody will come into your life and take and leave you with nothing left. How far do you let people come into your life? Is there a boundary set up? Where do you draw the lines at? People turn into cliques. Instead of lifting others up in Christ, we decide to tear them down. Where's your boundary at? Where is the line that gets drawn? Where's the boundary when helping out another church turns into, I'm scared you're going to take my congregation? What boundary? Sometimes it's the soft-spoken voice that gets the most. Kingdom citizens need to have a maturity about them. You need to set boundaries. Because if you don't set small boundaries, there ends up being big boundaries. And sometimes you even go too far with your big boundaries when you could have survived with the little boundaries. Something inside, there needs to be something inside citizens of the kingdom that says, oh, I'm coming up on a boundary. I don't like this boundary. I'm going back. There's something about it. I just don't feel right about this. No, I'm not up for this. I'm not up for going past this boundary. We can look at society. We can see jails are filled to the max. Why? Because they could not handle the boundaries of freedom that they were given. What happened when those boundaries were broke? Death is on the verge of someone who does not understand boundaries. A swamp or a marsh is destined to set in if you have no standards or boundaries in your life. And the sad thing is about that is you can slowly see people's life who are like this begin to fade. And it gets to get deeper and deeper, and you can see it happening. And you can see that they just continue to go into darkness. And no matter what you tell them, like, don't do this. I'm giving you wisdom. It's just like they're black and they don't see it, and they just keep going. And then pain has to bring them, and if that pain doesn't change them, then death is bound to happen. If you want to be a kingdom citizen, you must have boundaries. If you want to see the kingdom. Now, you can have no boundaries, and you don't have to see the kingdom. The choice is yours. You don't have to seek the kingdom. The choice is yours. It's up to you. But if you want to, you're going to have to set a standard in your life. Not a standard set by the church, because then that becomes rituals. A standard set in your heart to say, is this right? Is this wise? You can distinguish those who have boundaries and those who do not. Citizenship and its characteristics must have boundaries. You can go there, but I can't go there. I'm sorry. You could go and do that. That's all well and good, but I just can't do that. I'm sorry. I can't do that. And look, I appreciate the offer, but I just can't do that. I'm sorry. I can't go there. I can't be with them. I can't do this. I'm sorry. It's all for you. You have control of your own life, but I can't do that. I have a set of standards, and I need to meet those standards, and I'm not going to let my standards down just to enjoy some temporary feeling. Because characteristics of a kingdom, characteristics that a citizen says is, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I'm not going to judge you. You go and do your thing, but I can't do that with you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's a line that I have to draw, and that's it right there. I got to have control of my life, and I can't let you dictate to me what I can and cannot do. I control my own destiny. Character, and now, this is an interesting thing because we often think they're the same. Character and morals are different. Our morality may slip here and there, but you still have character. Even though your morality has slipped, if you have character, you recognize that mistake and you repent of it. If you have character, by the end of the day, you will do what you can to make it right if your morality slipped. That doesn't mean wrong will not happen in your life, because we are not perfect. But if wrong happens in your life, you're going to do everything you can to make it right. If you get it wrong, it's okay. You're not perfect. You're flesh. Even Paul said that his flesh does things that he doesn't like and he doesn't want to do them. That was Paul, a pinnacle of the New Testament, saying that, look, my flesh, it does things. I do things and I don't like doing them. I hate doing them, but my flesh. So I got to die daily. So if you get it wrong, that's okay. It's all right. You're going to get it wrong. But as long as your character says, you know what, God, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And I'm going to strive to do better. As always, I close with questions because I want you to think about things. And I want you to think about everything that I talk about, and I want you to ponder on it. And to be honest, I kind of want it to make you mad, because if you think about it and meditate on it, then chances are you're going to change. So my closing questions are this. Are you acting with active boundaries in your life? Have you set boundaries in your life? Do you even have a standard? Are you representing the kingdom as a citizen? When the king looks down at you, does he see himself? Or does he see just more darkness? What do your boundaries look like? Do you have boundaries in every aspect of your life? Do you have a set of standards that you say, no matter what, these standards will not be broke? Do you even have integrity? Do you even have character? Do you even have the desire to seek the kingdom? So my final question is this. What does your life look like? Is it in chaos, or is it peace? And if there is chaos in your life, then you are void of boundaries. And you need to reflect on your life and set some boundaries.